to certify that we have a quorum?
Yes, ma'am. And just to let everyone know, I'm having a problem with my camera today, so I won't be on screen, but I am here. And I'll start the roll with Miss Adams. I'm sorry, Miss Amos,
Here.
Vice Chair Adams,
Here.
Miss Smith,
Here, but cameraless as well.
Miss Mr. Banuelos.
Here.
Goochland County, we have our new representative, Mr. Gillespie.
Good morning here.
Good morning. Mr. Vadunez,
Here.
Miss Smidler,
Here.
Miss Austin, Miss Inman.
Good morning. Here.
Good morning. Mr. Shardine, Chair Clark. We'll go back and add her when she's able to join us. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. Plan RVA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
DRPT, Miss Dubinsky. Mr. Hudson.
Here.
GRTC, Miss Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
RMTA, Miss Simmons. VDOT, Mr. Hagan. Mr. Scheid.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. We do have a quorum. I'll go back now and check for people who might have joined since we were calling the roll.
Thank you, Janice. And I guess
Yeah, we have no other, no one else has joined as of yet, but I will let you know as soon as we have Chair Clark join the Zoom.
thank you, Janice.
Keep an eye out.
We'll keep an eye out for her. Yeah, so just moving on down our agenda, if anyone has any considerations to the amendments of the meeting agenda, or are we good with the agenda? Does everybody have the agenda now?
None from staff.
Nora, were you able to see the agenda that Miles just sent a link? Okay. All right, so there's no amendments to the meeting agenda, then we'll move on. If we can consider reviewing the approval of the February 11th TAC meeting minutes. If everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, are there any comments or corrections or a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve. This is Barb.
Thank you, Barb. Do we have a second?
This is Nora. I'll second.
Thank you, Nora. And Janice, do you just want to do a voice vote on the approval of the minutes?
Yes, a voice vote is fine for that. And I have Miss Clark, who has joined the Zoom, so I'm moving her over as a panelist now.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dorona.
Morning commute. So it sounded like we were just approving our February minutes. So now we're moving to item 5.
I think
All
we
right.
need a voice vote, or did we get the ayes?
Yeah,
Did I come in too late? Okay, wait. So right now we had a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes. And let's take the voice vote for that approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Good. Now I'm back on track, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, everybody. Pardon my tardiness. Open public comment period. Do we have anybody submit anything on this great agenda this morning?
We have not received any requests to address the group.
Awesome. Moving on to the TAC chairman's report. I would just say that we have a full pack agenda today. We're excited. We have a few action items that we hopefully can get over to the policy board for recommendation for approval. So I'll look forward to a productive meeting because it's exciting. And right now we're going to move to item 7, which is exciting, the bike ped VA. And just to highlight that in with Phil talking about the spines and the spurs, just a reminder of that conversation as Phil goes into that and we look to the action item. Again, we hope that all of the additions to the plan have been reviewed by each of you all staff to ensure that it is inclusive of your planned bicycle infrastructure improvements. Phil, you want to take over?
Good morning, Chair Clark. Thank you.
Morning.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and in the chat, put the link so everybody, if you want to review it on your own, it's the story map that we've created for the proposed projects, the spines and spurs. So I'm sharing that, but I'm now going to share my screen. Everybody's able to see that now. So I have presented this previously. There have been some edits to it, some updates, and so it's primarily the same as we talked about before. We've already defined, presented the spine definition when we did the bike ped plan, which was approved and adopted back in 2022. But the spur definition, I'll just go ahead and read it again. A spur route refers to an active transportation corridor that serves to connect vulnerable road users to activity centers and or to spine routes within the Richmond region on corridors that are safe and comfortable for users of all ages and abilities. So again, the spines, that's that fall line, north-south, the Capitol Trail, east and west, and then further to the west, we'd like to see eventually the James River Heritage Trail and the Three-Notched Trail connections that would head us out towards Goochland and beyond, hopefully to Charlottesville. So those definitions, the spur definition is part of what we're trying to review for today. We have this middle section of this story map that goes over all the spines and spurs, the proposed projects and everything. I think everyone's had a chance to review all of that by now. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the spurs. This is, as we chose them, identifying the projects along each of your proposed projects or the existing infrastructure along these routes, and trying to match what you had in your comprehensive plans, say in Richmond with the Richmond 300 plan. I know Chesterfield is just beginning that process again to update their trails, bikeways and trails chapter of the comprehensive plan. But we identified these 8 sections that we wanted to highlight, and I just want to briefly go over those. It begins with Chesterfield, the Centralia Road, Iron Bridge, and Kingsland corridors. I do apologize, on mine at least, it's kind of hiding that eastern side of the map, but fall line is the green line to the east, and then you've got, Kingsland is at the top there, and it's working its way toward Salem Church. You've got Centralia in the center as it makes its way to the government complex, and all the way, as we have it mapped, through Pocahontas State Park and Swift Creek. And then at the south, that's Iron Bridge Road. And, the county has plans to have a spur and shared use path along Route 10 to connect up to the courthouse complex. Similarly, as we make our way towards Richmond, we've identified off of fall line connections for the James River branch line and into Westover Hills area and across the James into Bird Park. We've got another that follows along Hull Street Road, making its way all the way into Chesterfield. Chesterfield sort of matching with what Henrico, I'm sorry, with what, with the city on Hull Street Road, continuing in that corridor, um, passing Chippenham here. So in downtown, obviously a key hub for the connections of the spines in the downtown area. So then we split off from 17th Street, the ability to go up Franklin Street, which is this corridor using the contraflow and the proposed continuation of those all the way to Lombardy Street. A Chaco Valley Trail connection out here to Scott's Addition, and then coming up Oliver Hill Way and Fairfield Avenue toward Mechanicsville Turnpike and continuing out into Henrico County. So 3 different spurs we identified from the spine route in the downtown area. Another similar route off of the Capitol Trail, Gillies Creek out into Henrico towards Highland Springs. Each of these routes depends a little bit on some of the neighborhood streets, those lower traffic stress streets, making connections between some of the existing proposed projects along that route. We have where Fall Line comes into Bryan Park, we have several opportunities to connect, out into Henrico County using either Dumbarton Avenue, Bird Hill, which connects out here to Dickens, and then beyond to Forest Avenue. And then this is I'm sorry, I'm dropping the name of the street. I think it's Bethlehem, through all this that connects through these areas. Again, matching with some of with the plans that Henrico has for all of these corridors along here. And then obviously Bryan Park is in the city, but connecting from those those existing trails within the park. Again, we've presented on these. This one's a little bit convoluted with a lot of different Henrico and Hanover connections, but this is Fall Line. We've got Woodman Road, which exists, and then the connections from Woodman Road and the trail that exists along there into Virginia Center Commons, and then along Telegraph Road here from Virginia Center Commons into Hanover. So we've talked about that with both staffs, and trying to make that connection along Telegraph is pretty key. And it expands. Hanover has the opportunity to connect to the Atlee Station Road planned multi-use or shared use path along that area. And then along Cedar Road, they have plans to connect another spur to connect with Fall Line through that corridor. Henrico, again, sort of this Western Beltway as we go through from Glen Allen along the Mountain Road corridor and out into the Innsbrook area. Using, again, these are planned routes that the county has identified in their comprehensive plan. And that's the last of we have here. I was going to say the greater map does also include, I don't want to leave Amy out, that we identified the I'm sorry, I'm waiting for it to come up here. This corridor in Charles City connecting all the way to New Kent. I did not have that as a pulled out focused spur, but we do have that still on our map. So are there any questions?
Let's make that into a full house.
We do have a request for action on this. We're hoping that the TAC would take this up and recommend it for approval and moving it on to the policy board.
We do have hands up. Barb?
Phil, you've been working hard with JJ on this. What I was noticing is on Hall Street, the spur that's shown stops at Hicks Walmsley.
Yes.
And I would request that we extend that all the way to Courthouse Road, which gets you to Rockwood Park and also gets you to Courthouse Road, where we've got a STARS study in place that shows a shared use path between 360 and Route 60. So I'd want to see that extended up to 60. So adding that little western and then turning it to go north between 360 and 60.
Okay.
And then the other one is over on Route 10,
Yes.
north of 288, where you've got the Kingsland Road spur heading west towards Iron Bridge Park.
Yes.
Making the connection to Route 10 and then connecting those two spurs, the Cogbill spur and this Kingsland on Route 10. Really, I would want to see it go all the way up to Stratton Park, but we do have a park coming in off of Cogbill Road. That's going to have some connection. But if we could extend Kingsland Road spur to Route 10 and then put that connection between those two spurs, I think that would be great.
Lots of good updates. Okay, I've got those down, and I know we've discussed a lot of those. Okay.
And thank you, Barb. And then I'll go to Amy. Just one quick question, if I could, Amy. Phil, how do we go about updating this document? So past this point, like, do we have a procedure? Because as you like, people are going to be saying stuff maybe even today, and there may be stuff that come up. How does that work? And that may help to and then I have that question. So let me take Amy, and then Miles, you can answer my question after Amy and Sharon. Thank you, Amy.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Morning.
Phil, this is great. And I apologize for my voice. I still have a lingering flu stuff. So, is there any way we can get a foldout of our House Road connection? And we can.
I'm sorry, can you say
hear
it
me?
again? I didn't hear the full request.
Is there any way we could get a foldout like you did for the others? Or I'm not sure what you called it, but yeah, for our Courthouse Road.
Yes, Miles mentioned this morning that we should have added that on there. So yes, I will add a pullout, I guess, if that's what you're calling it. I will add that that spur connection as one of the focus on potential spurs in that section.
Yes. Can't forget us, Phil. Don't do that. So yeah, that would be good. And then my other question is, has this like been reviewed by any of the bike groups like Rava to see how these routes reconcile with our traditional routes that are ridden like all the time? Like that people actually use?
I have not put that to review from
Okay,
other
go ahead.
bike groups,
Okay.
but primarily what we're doing is reflecting what is already in
Yeah.
all these other localities, all of your localities' plans.
Okay.
But I I am a rider. I ride a lot of these routes, and some of these are ones that I personally have ridden on a lot. But I understand your question, and that is it's a good proposal. It's a good
Well,
idea.
yeah. And there's lots of routes, leading out of Portobello on Osborne and all Kingsmill and through all, and I don't really know how those, well, actually they do connect into the Capitol Trail. And it goes through the historic battlefield and everything. So it's really kind of cool that people might want to see,
Sure.
Whether you actually have built facilities on those roads or they're just connectors. I don't know, but maybe I'm getting too in the deep, but I do think it would be cool.
I was going to say the main identifier through a lot of these is the activity centers. We're trying to direct people to those identified data, proven activity centers.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to coordinate a meeting with them, I'll be happy to help with that.
Thank you.
Just as a side thing.
Sharon?
Thank you. Bill, I appreciate you meeting with the individual localities between the TAC meetings. That was super helpful. As we had mentioned in our meeting, we have some to be studied in our draft bike plan. Then we're meeting this afternoon to go over some of that so we can clarify, whether it's buffered bike lanes, or shared use path. And I guess that kind of leads into what Dirona started to say. Can we just share our revised link with you so the regional matches the localities plan? Just share the link with you, and hopefully that we could update it that way so we both are consistent. Or how do we go about, is this locked in stone today or after we approve it, or do we have some wiggle room?
I was going to say, Miles, I think you were about to answer
It
Daruna's
was like,
question, and
wow.
maybe you can help with Sharon's as well.
Yeah, so our goal with this process is to do this update every 2 years because we know you're updating comp plans, you'll have updated priorities. So we want to make sure we're updating the mapping at every 2 years. And the goal is to line that up with the TAP process so that we've updated capturing all the local projects that are planned. Then we go into the TAP cycle so that we can at least get some extra points because we're coordinating on those projects. And as you may know, the TAP process, the way we have it now, is projects that are shown in the bike ped plan get more points than projects that aren't in our bike ped plan. So the idea is we're trying to promote those projects, and if we are coordinating, we're capturing everything that's in your comp plans. So that's the intent, is for this to just be every couple years with small updates. So if there are big changes in between, we will be able to capture them pretty regularly. It won't sit for 20 years like we did last time before we have another update. In terms of the immediate question, I think anything that we can get, in the next week, like by the 21st, we can put into the sort of planned projects. But the action that we're requesting today would solidify sort of the spur designation. So anything beyond that would be more of just these would be included as part of the proposed projects data set and sort of what's in the maps.
Hold on, what are you saying? Hold on, Miles. You said, and so we're saying that the specific spines, and then what are you saying about the other planned to be studied?
Sure. So the specific spines and spurs, we're hoping the action today will lock down and agree on all the red lines that Phil's shown on these maps. The general projects and sort of what's planned, we can take those for a little bit longer. So through like the 21st, which would be next Friday, if you have any last minute revisions that we didn't capture, we're happy to update those before we take it to the policy board. But we do have to lock it down so we can get it to the policy board in the next month or two. So that's sort of with the action. We're proposing to approve the spurs definition, the mapping of the spines and spurs, as well as sort of this overall update to the planned projects. But we do have a little leeway on the overall planned projects.
Okay, so that's good. So what I'm hearing is we have about 10 days, and I had wrote down like a public review 10 to 14 day. So it sounds like we have 10 days where we could potentially maybe solicit some input outside, just like a last push. Hey, this is gonna be like an email blast or something to the bike groups. I don't know, like sports backers or any of them. I don't know, like the rest of the public engagement outside of the TAC that's been done. So that would be helpful to know, just in knowing how, to lay that out. So what Miles has said is that we need to do this today or within the next month, which is not preferred, in order to get this the defined spines and spurs, the definitions, plus the preliminary route itself as shown on the map. They talked a little bit about, and so Miles, when you talked about the other spurs or the other planned projects, would that be by your nomenclature here, local spurs? I'm just trying to align what you said there with what I'm reading in what would be the motion.
Yes, ma'am. So the motion would include all of the planned projects. So the local spurs are just some of those projects, but we're trying to
Okay.
include everything that we've received from you all from the comprehensive plans and all the updates from the conversations Phil's been having.
Okay, so it sounds like even in that action, so it says spurs definitions, the selected spine spurs. Seems like it could be local spurs and planned projects identified by locality staff. And then with that being potentially the motion, we technically have until the 21st to provide any additional planned projects 2 miles to be included in this. With that understanding, does anyone want to make a motion for recommendation of approval? Based on what's been presented and the additional 10 days to get any planned projects in.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Josh.
Yes.
Just a note, first of all, great work. I love seeing the story map and all the different potential connections. Just a note, in Goochland County, we have the dark purple spine, and it looks like shared use path symbology on top of that. And of course, then there's the kind of the third category. And on the one map that has spurs and spines with bike infrastructure, proposed projects and activity centers, which is obviously going to be a busy map anyway. That dark purple with the dark blue it's just hard to pick up what that is. And so I don't know if there's another color or if we need to put a mask around the dark blue so when it shows up on a dark color, it always pops out. But I think most of the colors you can read, purple on red and red on green and all the different colors, but that is really hard to see. And so I would make a note that's going to be true in the city of Richmond, where there's a spine that has a dark color on it. It's just hard to read. I would also note, I think it's worthwhile that the activity centers today in Goochland and Powhatan counties include the courthouses. And I know that's not maybe some of our typical definitions of activity centers, but that's where we have civic uses, including obviously courthouses, but schools and shopping, recreation, retail. And so I would want small activity centers, at least on the courthouses in Goochland and Powhatan. I think probably Charles City might say the same thing, and New Kent. And then lastly, there's a conceptual river crossing that's shown using it. Well, it's in a north-south alignment between Powhatan and Goochland, which runs basically from prison to prison, state farm to state farm. There's a little low bridge that goes over the James River there. And if you've never driven it, I encourage everybody to seek it out. Bicyclists use it. And that sort of pink conceptual north-south crossing, it really shouldn't be conceptual because there's an existing bridge there. So it's just a matter of aligning the pink line with the bridge. That's on the very, yep.
Very good.
And then I would say the 3-notch trail is not here. Phil made reference to the 3-notch trail, and I don't know if it's worth, that trail obviously is a much longer trail and involves a lot of other regions, but we're not highly activated on the 3-notch trail in Goochland today, but it is, if it's going to go on a map, this is the time to put it on a map. And then I would add one more thing, which is I think for a local spur, River Road, at least in Goochland County, is the way to get from State Route 6 back to, there are a lot of cyclists that use it today, and I think it would be the easier way to get people, because otherwise when you look west of Bon Air, there are kind of some things that dead end, when in reality there are riders today that are going up and down River Road, and they're using that as a regular route. I don't know that I would call it a spine, but they're using it as it's a fairly regular travel route.
And we definitely have to be, so with this, it sounds like some of us, we still feel, I don't know how you're going to add these in or how if we think that we can do this in 10 days, as far as getting the specific lines, because I'm not sure if everybody has the capability of getting getting the files over to Plan RVA. So we're leaning a little bit towards we're not ready, but I'm going to take some more questions, Sherry, and then Amy.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, I do agree with Mr. Gillespie about, having our courthouse and our school areas noted on our spurs here in Charles City as well. So that was a very good point Mr. Gillespie brought up.
Thank you. Amy? Muted, Amy, if you're talking. And actually, okay, Amy, and then, sorry, Frank, I'm gonna go to you next. Okay, Amy?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so we agree. I mean, the courthouse is an activity center, and you can as well. But I just am looking at the map you have up right now.
You're muted again, Amy. Hold on.
Somebody keeps muting me. I'm not muting me.
Can't
Somebody's trying
believe-
to start. So, all right, guys. Now don't play with me because I've been sick. So, okay.
Look, my hands are right here. I'm not doing it.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So did you hear me about the part about, yes, we concur with the courthouse because New Kent, our
Yes.
route should call courthouse? Okay, well, now I'm looking at the map that you have up right now. And it's for that Huguenot Trail in Powhatan. I live in Powhatan. I'm not representing Powhatan, but I am a resident of Powhatan. And I drive Huguenot Road daily. And I'm just curious, is this supposed to be an on-street or is this going to be some separated facility? Because this is very dangerous. And I know people that will ride it very, they don't know. They think it's going to be a great ride and then it's very dangerous. So I don't know where that route came from, but I would just recommend maybe thinking about that a little bit before you put it on a map.
Madam Chair, if I may, we have planning from Powhatan acknowledging that could be a shared use path along that corridor. That's.
They think there's the right of way to do that. Okay. Well, I'll talk with them. If they think they can get a shared use path on there, okay.
It sounds like we actually have a lot of questions still, and so maybe we should, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, should I just suggest we defer this action today?
Let's see. Frank, did you have something? We have a couple of hands still up, Phil.
Oh, yeah, I just want to, ask, if this is all finalized and, locked up, will there be a location or where would I find detailed information on the final product? Because obviously asking because of the North-South BRT project, so I can direct, the consultant to the right location.
Okay, so we're working on that, Frank. Barb?
I just wanted to emphasize consistency. We've gotten a lot of comments today, and Phil, I know you've been trying to be consistent with how we're defining local spurs, regional spurs, the spines, activity centers, all of that. So I think that is important to be consistent region-wide as we try to address the comments.
Yeah, and I think with the rule, I think with the activity center, maybe Phil, you can tell us, or Miles, if that, what they're saying about that is true and can be defined adequately in this process for them as an activity center. Miles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so just to address some of those concerns, and I agree with Phil. We're happy to defer as needed if everyone's not on board. But the rural courthouses generally aren't regional scale activity centers. So this is based on a density of activity units, so jobs and people. So we don't have those mapped as regional activity centers, but I wanted to highlight, and this is something we haven't talked with the TAC before on, in our natural resources planning. So the environmental program here at Planner VA, we're also working on a natural resources plan. So green infrastructure and also greenways. And that greenways planning is connecting to a lot more of the, the rivers, parks, those sorts of destinations, but also includes rural centers as part of that effort. So this is being undertaken to coordinate with the spines and spurs as sort of another leg of those connections, but heading to different places. So rather than the regional scale activity centers, focusing more on the smaller rural centers and the recreational destinations.
Thank you for that clarification. And I would still say that it would probably be beneficial once that's completed to actually overlay them. It's probably necessary too, to make sure that the urban is integrating well with the rural and how we're planning.
Yes, ma'am. That's our plan, is to have one integrated regional bikeways network.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so with that, I mean, we know that everybody, when we're hot in the moment, we have all our input. So has everybody given their input and within 10 days want to provide additional to keep this moving? Or if we defer this, you're actually going to look at it and fill some information and we move it forward a month from now. So your call, everybody. Entertain a motion to defer or to recommend for approval. No motion on the floor? All right. Well, based on no motion. Okay, wait, do I hear somebody? Nora?
This is Nora, and if Phil's okay with the deferral, then I would make a motion that we defer to our next TAC meeting.
All right, Josh, I'll get you after. Can we get a second on this before discussion?
Second, Barb.
Thank you. Josh, discussion?
Yes, thank you. So I hear what Miles is saying about regional centers and activity centers. Point taken. Again, I'm a new person to the group, so I can I can say thank you. So along those lines, also a point of information, I didn't hear a response back on the 3-notch trail. Is that something that should be tracking in our regional plan, or is it premature?
Miles?
Yes. So right now we have the James River Heritage Trail lines shown on here, which is basically Route 6. The intent is that this could potentially be one of the options for an alignment of 3-notched. One of the items, and this is later in our agenda for today, that we want to propose for next year's work plan is to actually start looking at this western spine to refine what we mean when we're talking about 3-notched in our western spine. Is it Route 6? Is it 250? Is there somewhere else that makes more sense? So we've got the eastern end, we got the north-south. So let's figure out the western piece of the core spines. So that's sort of in our to-do list for the region.
Okay, thank you. I know there's been a lot of interest in actually tracking the historic 3-notched or 3-chopped road, which is not along the river.
Madam Chair, if I may, this route, as Miles said, is the James River Heritage Trail corridor that the Department of Conservation and Recreation had identified and has been acknowledged in the Goochland comprehensive plan. But yes, as Miles said, we want to be able to study all the options as we would move through, toward Charlottesville. And so, yes, would love to be able to jump into that in much greater detail with you at another time. But yes, thank you for asking, because it's hot on our minds.
Okay, thank you.
All right, awesome. So we have a motion and a second. We're going to do a voice call. All those in favor of the motion, please vote aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Awesome. So with that, I will just give the ending caveat. Maybe we push it out to some of the bike groups and some of those while we're in this open period. And when you send out a reminder to us field to get you the information. I'm sending it to my team now, so I'm done. Check. And so, good. So we'll be hearing more from you on that update.
Thank you,
Moving
Madam
to
Chair.
item 8. I knew Miles. Miles, you're bad time projector. Item 8. So this one too. Let me make sure. Is that the one? Yeah, so this one is going to be a great discussion as well. We have some money, talking about projects and money. Miles, flexible regional funding.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will try and save us some time on the staff presentation with this one, but this is for our existing project requests. If you've read through the agenda packets, you'll see we had a general overview, we had a summary of the request as well as the applications that were submitted, but we did not come to a recommendation on any of them. That was because we had learned just before the agenda packets went out that there was a reduction in funding expected. As of yesterday afternoon, we have the updated estimates for the next 6 years. So we're able to share that information now. So here is the overview. This top line is the baseline of what we expected based on where we were last year with the funding program and just extrapolating the last year out at a flat level for year 6. And this is the updated revenue estimate. So it's about $11.5 million less in RSTP, 5.5 in CMAC, and 1.2 in the carbon program. On the whole, I think it's about a 6.8% reduction across the whole program. And it's not evenly spread, so it's not every year that's being cut by 6.8%.
Miles,
yes.
could you go back to that one last time? Sorry. Writing it, not screenshotting it today. Okay, thank you.
And so it's not evenly spread across the 6 years. Year 1 is the most significant impact and smaller impacts for the out years. And that has an important consideration with what we're looking at today, because this is sort of the overview of the balance entry targets. But basically what this means is we have 60% of the funding goes to projects when it first comes in, and then 10% becomes available each year up to year 3. We don't have anything that we're trying to allocate. We're trying to keep it in reserve for year 2 into year 1. And then if we don't use it in year 1 and it rolls over to previous, then we try and allocate all of it, as well as any closeouts from previous years. In practice, what that looks like is that we actually have a hole in fiscal 26 and 27 currently, where we have over allocated based on the previous revenue estimates for the existing projects as well as balance entry. Most of this can be addressed just by reducing the balance entry, but in fiscal 26, so year 1, we're actually going to have to pull some money off of a project and move it to a different year. So this is the same trend across all of the programs. So you can see CMAC in a hole in the first 2 years with expected funding available in the later years. And same with the carbon program. I do want to highlight that there is previous money. So that is year 1, fiscal 25 money that we didn't use that's rolling over to previous, or closeouts from other projects that have been completed but had surplus funds. So that's the pot that we're really working with. So this 6.3 in RSTP, the 2.6 in CMAC, and this just under 250 in carbon is what we're looking at to try and address these concerns.
Hold on one second. What was the RSTP? I know it's not that anymore.
Yeah, here you go. 6.3. So because we're operating with a lot less revenue than we were expecting here, our recommendation is to allow staff to focus on just balancing out the program for fiscals 26 and 27 and using the out years as needed for that, and to focus on projects that are ready to go to construction using the previous money. So we make sure that that's all used up and put onto a project. And so in your packets, you have these summary sheets that we put together for each of the requests. This covers each of the projects. It gives you an update on what the latest estimate is, what that change was, what the new request is, what that would change from previous TPO commitment, the next phase, what funding, and then some notes about any other money on it, any other important considerations. There's a map, and then there's this sort of funding history for each project. The first 4 in your packet are projects that are moving into construction either this fiscal year or next fiscal year, which we would recommend as the priorities for this effort. So that includes the Route 1 shared use path, Marywood to Ellingham. That's part of the Fall Line Trail in Chesterfield County. Jank Road, which this is a special case. This is one of those legacy projects, and it is a significant jump in cost from the previous time that we saw it. And it was also the last time we awarded funding. The expectation was construction was starting the following year, which obviously was not the case. So we're trying to see if we can fit that one in as well, if that makes sense. Deepwater Terminal, also in the city. This is an extension to improve port access. And that's a $2 million request. And then Meadowdale Boulevard in Chesterfield, which is a bike ped project, CMAQ funded. So those are the 4 projects that are heading into construction either this fiscal year or next fiscal year. There are 4 additional projects that are in PE or right-of-way, and they have more time based on the schedules that were submitted. And we're recommending we don't look at those today, and we can just kind of cross those off from the list if everyone's in agreement. And that's consistent with the approach we've taken over the past few years of really deferring on anything that doesn't need the money today. So that's 2 projects in Chesterfield, the Fall Line on Route 1, Old Bermuda 100 Roundabout, Mayo Bridge in the city, and then Hull Street Phase 3. So those are the 4 projects that we're going to recommend that we don't focus on for this discussion. And then there's the last project, which is Ride Finders. So this is a $2 million request on top of the annual $500,000 award that Ride Finders receives. And this is really, it's an expansion and integration of the city's employee trip reduction program with the Ride Finders program. And it's just expanding the scope of what Ride Finders is doing to cover both of those efforts. And it would also help to support GRTC's efforts to maintain zero fare. And there is no active city employee trip reduction program. So this is kind of bringing it, folding it into the Ride Finders fold. So those are the 5 projects that I'd like to focus on. Again, staff just got the new information yesterday, so we don't have a straightforward recommendation in this case. But what we're trying to meet is, in general, the 6-year plan needs to be developed by May, and for the CTB to approve it in June. So we're trying to give ourselves time to get to policy board approval in April or May, and be able to work with VDOT to develop the updated allocations to match these additional awards as recommended by the TAC and approved by the policy board. So with that, I'll stop, Madam Chair. And I'm happy to bounce back to any other slides as needed for the discussion.
Okay, awesome. Lots of information, but pretty straightforward when we're dealing with constrained dollars. So I guess, does anyone have any comments or any objections to the overall approach, which is to fund, and I know, Richmond had a large one in there, so we can definitely have a conversation, but to fund those that are really letting for construction now or the next year, in the next couple of fiscal years. But again, entertain any questions. Again, if we like the approach and want to move forward, we have comments. Okay, because I was about to make a motion. Sharon?
Sorry, everybody's hands shot up right at the same time. I agree with Miles's approach. That sounds very logical to me. Of course, yeah, the balance entry try to balance that out with the programming and, fund first those getting ready to go to construction in fiscal year 25. And then seeing what will fit with those in fiscal year 25 with how much is left after the balance entry or those getting ready to go to construction in fiscal year 25. That's it for me.
Thank you. Barb?
I just wanted to understand a little bit of the status on Jank. So Miles indicated that we'd seen that last year and thought it was going to construction. Has it been advertised and bids came in high? I just,
Yeah, I do want to, I think that it has been advertised and the bids are high. I'm not sure if I have my well, not mine, but our engineer online. But let me get on my phone, Barb, and I can follow up with you in just a second.
Okay,
My
that sounds,
understanding, Madam Chair, was that it was re-advertised last summer and it came in high. So we're looking to try and adjust for the new information on that.
So last summer.
but
What
not
caused the delay?
award.
Let me see why it wasn't awarded.
Right, so it's gonna have to be re-advertised again, I guess. And
Okay.
then on the ride finders, the description was employee trip reduction for the city. So that's like carpool, vanpool?
Well, the employee trip reduction was a long-term funded by the region for employees to do van pool. It was also the buses. So you could, if you worked in the city of Richmond, you could request a bus pass, and that equated to riding the bus for free under, getting incentive to ride the bus for free under this program. And so when COVID hit, we probably still had $250,000 left, but people weren't riding in vans. And so we've been working literally in our office over the last couple of years, looking at ways to expand it across the region through like workforce and other things. And then finally, we linked up with Ride Finders based on, it was a question Mr. Peterson posed a long while ago when we were presenting on the employee trip reduction was, hey, it sounds like you and Ride Finders are doing the same thing when it comes to promoting these vans, rides, and reduction. And so we kind of took that and said, how can we work together to see how this, and he always asked, why is it just for City of Richmond employees? So we think that this partnership allows for that same permeating incentive to help reduce emissions across the region. Really is a good use for CMAQ dollars when it comes to looking at large scale emission reductions through transit. So yeah, we merged them merged the idea based on there was some duplication. We were buying our van tickets through the program from Ride Finders anyway. So there was just a lot of now hindsight saying, what can really push the region. We think that it's very important, especially for the rurals that are getting the link services. The free fare really is going to help that sustain itself to really get to where it's going. And so we thought it was a good way that everybody in the region, but through prioritization, could support reducing emissions.
It just the way it's written up.
We talked about that. We have to change that because we don't think it'll hit the muster on the FHWA. So we do have to work on Miles. We talked about it, and we need to talk with GRTC to really, I was thinking of like zero emission incentive program. Like we really have to make sure that we don't corner it into a fare replacement. So we're we're working.
Okay. Yeah. Because, right, if there are zero fares, then the only thing that this money would be going to would be to subsidize van pool.
Yeah, so it's It's a
if it's an
and Frank,
employee
yeah, and I
subsidy.
think who's on here? Maybe Patricia, who met with us. I think Patricia.
I'm here, Darren.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry, Frank. Yeah. If you want to expand any on it.
No, I think we looked at it and we looked at it from different perspectives in terms of the benefits of the program to Fare Free, right? Because we are looking at it in terms of being having the Fare Free in place. How has that impacted ridership? And we looked at a survey that we did in 2023 and the percentage of people that answered a question to, if were they riding GRTC before the Fare Free initiative came into being. And then found
Yeah,
out,
I understand.
right. So it's just pretty much looking at, that mode shift and how we can sustain that mode shift, but also build upon that by, helping ride finders conduct extensive outreach with regional stakeholders, just to be able to continue to grow that mode shift.
Okay, so it's really money for ride finders to use for every locality, not just the city.
No, it's so this is a more of a regional program that we are anticipating for it to be, but managed by ride finders, but also in coordination with all the regional stakeholders.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely need to rewrite the description because
Okay.
I think it's a little confusing.
Okay.
All right, that's it.
Well, we hopefully. Nora, you have a question?
I do. Miles, for the Jenk Road, do you mind pulling up the application and sharing that? It's on page 25 of the agenda package if you have it open.
Sure, I can share that.
And Tyrone, I understand if you don't have all the answers to the questions, but on this application, I could be wrong in how I'm reading it. It looks like it's still showing construction in 2024, that it was supposed to start in October 2024, but construction didn't start.
Yeah, so I'm on the phone right now with the project manager engineer, and he's telling me that currently VDOT is awaiting, we're awaiting VDOT to give us the go ahead on the advertisement, which is then tied to probably a revamp of the environmental, depending on the time that is lapsed. I'm not sure. And Lamont, who's our project manager there at VDOT?
We shouldn't have advertisement authorization within 30 days.
So they think we should have re-advertisement authorization within 30 days of the funding being allocated, or at least said to be allocated to the project.
Miles, do you want me to, am I able to share? Do you want me to share it?
Yes, that'd be great. Sorry, I was scrolling through the pages trying to get there.
Yeah. Hold on. It's page 25, if that helps. Oh, you got it. Okay. I can't share. There we go. So on here, you'll see the construction date further below still says October of 2024. So I'd like to get new dates there if possible.
Okay.
And then I don't have the exact number of what it was before, but it looks like it's going up about 15 million or so, 14, 15 million, just looking at the chart. And you are only asking for 6 million. If you go down to the section that shows where the money's coming from, where are you using local funds to meet that deficit between the 6 million and whatever the additional is?
Hold on 1 second. Lamont. So we have a question live on our TPO TAC meeting, and that question is, we're looking at a screenshot of the construction start date being denoted October 4th, 2024, and there being a deficit outside of the 6 million. The question is, what is the city's plan on that additional deficit not shown? Well, one, they want the information updated on the construction, but where's that deficit dollars coming from?
CBTI, local CBTI.
Okay. So yeah, that's coming out of our CIP local CBTA.
I think that's really important to highlight, that you've got local money, you're investing local money to try to shore up the balance. I think the policy committee will like hearing that.
I agree, but I don't think you're highlighting it enough in this document. I mean, if
Right.
you might want to make sure that
No.
they know that, maybe even on your slide, Miles, talk about how the rest of that deficit's being covered, because I don't think it said local funds on your other slide. But before you go to that slide, if you scroll up, it has just a tiny little bit. It says the reasons for the change in the project schedule. It doesn't have a lot of detail. Maybe before you go to the policy board, add a little bit more detail to that.
Thank
That's all I
you.
had. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora and Barb. Barb, your hand's up again, and then we have, looks like somebody got, well, Mr. Hagan?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind folks too, another milestone that's important to consider for resolving deficits is scoping. VDOT would require one of two things to close scoping: either the deficit's been resolved associated with the new scoped estimate, or there's a plan moving forward, a solidly demonstrated plan moving forward to resolve scoping. So I see on this list, there's two projects, 118146 in Chesterfield and 115200 in the city. Both of those have comments in our system that indicate scoping's planned for this spring. So the issue of resolving the deficits on those is going to need to come up then. So just want to bring that up as a thought. Another thing, we also require a demonstration of full funding for right-of-way authorization. And I mean, I don't see any of these with right-of-way authorizations coming up in the next couple months. They're out there a little further, so maybe that's not an issue. But it is probably worth it to think about the two that have scoping needs. Thanks.
Thank you. And Miles, if we could get a point of clarity, because I think I went off a little bit when Sharon was describing the 25 letting years. So your approach is trying to do the things that may occur within the next 2 years, or just to kind of tie in with Mr. Hagan is saying on, hey, are we anticipating this when we say ready for construction? Is that in months, or is that something that we're also looking at longer out with the selection of your recommendation?
That's correct. We were trying to look at construction within 25 or 26. So kind of on the questions about jank, even if it pushes to next year, we'd still want to address it. For right of way, over the past couple years, we haven't been proactively addressing projects moving into the right of way phase. We have been waiting until construction to try and resolve those deficits. So I think that's been the approach that the TAC's taken, at least over the past 2 or 3 years, to try and stretch the dollars that we have.
All right, well, it sounds like, I know, maybe I think we could potentially entertain the motion. I think that there's 2 requests on. That would be for the updating of the information on the Jank Road, the project information, the local funding contribution, and any more detail on the reason for delay, and the re-advertisement with the dates. We also heard that the ride finders, UPC 201, needs to have some wordsmithing on its notes and description, and what we would submit to the policy board as well. So I think I've named the 2 caveats with the 2 separate projects out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects that Miles talked about. So with that, I would entertain a motion and I would spell out maybe for, do we want to spell out for the motion just the UPC number to ensure that we are clear? Let me just get so here the TAC should review and provide a funding recommendation on each of the submitted projects for incorporation into the draft funding allocation plan. So the motion would be the TAC reviewed and the TAC is providing recommendation for, should I say the 5 that we discussed, or do we have further discussion? All right, UPC Barb Smith.
Sorry, I was wondering whether we should consider deferring if we have time for that, to address, to get these little changes made and see it.
Okay, so
Do we have time?
And Miles, I think I asked you that. What do you want to explain, please?
Sure. We can defer. We need action by the May policy board meeting to be able to get a draft into the 6-year plan. So we can take an extra month and staff will just have to work on the allocations plan sort of in between before we actually have information on it. That's the only change.
Okay, thanks.
Sharon?
I agree with Barb. I think it would be more organized if we deferred to have more information before we go to the policy board, so we're more informed and can explain to our board members what we're thinking and the reasoning behind it. And I think it would be better if we deferred.
All right, so right now we are either entertaining a motion to approval or a motion to defer.
I'll move to defer this item. This is Barb.
Sharon Smidler, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Awesome, very good. Let's move on to our next item.
All right. Thank
Item
you, Madam
9,
Chair.
regional funding framework review.
And I promise this one will be quick. So this is the follow-up of the framework. As you know, we have been reviewing this every couple months. We took a break last month to focus on safety. The items that we still have left for this month are bike ped and the overall time commitment from staff and from sponsors. So just recapping our previous discussions, we reviewed the current thresholds of when it has to go to the TAC and the policy board, and agreed to add an additional waiver process when projects go above 50% cost increase, which would be limited to overall macroeconomic hardships, local hardships where there is no additional funding that could meet that need, and then the legacy projects that we're trying to knock out. We talked about a readiness bonus of adding 10 points after the cost benefit score based on some readiness factors, which included certain levels, certain studies and levels of design, basically giving credit for projects that have more done already and more is already known about them. We have talked about reducing the application limit to 40 in total, which would be 6 for our larger localities and 2 for our smaller localities and non-locality sponsors. And we recommended no action on our sort of making regional priorities, only CLRP projects or something along those lines. Which brings us to the remaining concerns. Bike ped funding is the big one that's left. So the question was really, how do we ensure that we're funding projects that are major priorities like the fall line or some of the major arterials where we're trying to improve the pedestrian access. And we looked at a few options. It was looking at projects that were from the constrained long-range transportation plan, limiting it to multi-jurisdictional trails, or limiting it to projects that were in the bike ped plan. And as you can see, this was 1 out of 5. There was no widespread support for any of these options from the surveys that we did. So what we recommend is holding off on any revisions for the RSTP CMAQ side of the program right now. But we did want to take this chance to propose some revisions for TAP since it's in the same framework document. So as you know, our TAP program, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, we have the statewide merit scores worth 80% of the points. 10% is based on our regional equity emphasis areas and proximity to those and serving those communities. And then 10% is based on the regional value of the project, which is essentially its inclusion in the bike ped plan. And then it's a cost benefit score that we calculate. The current language, as you can see here, regionally significant projects identified in the plan will receive 10 points. Locally significant projects identified in the plan will receive partial points based on its classification in the network hierarchy. So what we're proposing is to take the follow-up on Phil's discussion is to just map that to actual numbers so it's even less ambiguous. Regional spines, projects on those would be worth 10 points, regional spurs 7 points, local spurs 5 points, all the other local projects 3 points, and if it's not in the plan, 0 points. So it'd just be amending the document to add this accompanying table to clarify the language that's already in there. So that's the proposal that we had on the TAP side, and I'm happy to stop here, Madam Chair.
Sorry. All right, we got a couple questions. Amy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay today?
Yes.
So I guess Miles, but maybe for everyone, the scoring is basically gonna benefit, the larger urban regional projects. So those of us who are in the rural areas that may have significant projects that are not in the plan with their local plan are clearly gonna be at a disadvantage to receive funding that, we desperately need. There aren't a lot of other pots that we can go to. So I guess I would just challenge this in that I think this disadvantages the rural localities who have a significant need. If I'm reading it correctly, I may not be, but that's what it looks like to me. Because we have one regional spine. I guess is what we're calling or spine. And then all of ours are going to be either a local spur or other local. But there are significant projects in our comprehensive plan and our multimodal transportation plan. So I guess I have a little bit of trouble with this.
All right, thank you. And Miles, we may anticipate it, putting the rating, and we haven't finalized those items, but we have more questions. Barb.
Yeah, my comments are similar. The bike ped plan says ped, but there's not a lot of ped in it. It's really very bike focused. And I think there are opportunities for TAP to address pedestrian safety that won't be captured if we just focus on this methodology. So, whether we consider high volume, high speed roads and pedestrian crossings or putting in sidewalk where there is no sidewalk, ways to address pedestrian safety, I think is a good use of TAP funding. And there might be a way for us to define that so that it is more regional and not necessarily very local. I don't know.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I think the thought behind this and just in general is the language is already in there, right? The regionally significant versus locally significant ranking, and that's why we had proposed just trying to clarify it. We were actually just trying to add more detail to make it clearer what we were referring to. But if we need to rework these, again, we're happy not to resolve this today. It sounds like if the bike ped plan is taking a delay, it makes sense to delay this component of it as well. But the goal is, again, still for this to get this framework completed by the end of the fiscal year. So as we move into the next funding cycle, we have it in place. I think the other piece of that is sidewalk projects are just they're not going to be at the same regional scale, right? It just inherently a sidewalk project is hyper local. It's going to cover a block. It's going to be a single street crossing. And so that makes it difficult from balancing that sort of regional priority projects. We want the money to be able to support the fall line with those very local safety improvements. And I think we all agree that safety is an important component and we should be looking at those, but trying to balance that out with the regionally significant nature that we've already identified in the framework is what we were trying to do. So.
Barb has her hand up, and then Amy again.
So yeah, I see what you're saying about sidewalk. Maybe it's considering the regional activity centers, proximity being within regional activity centers. And I do want to kind of go back on the agenda and suggest that with the bike ped RVA plan, if we're not going to show stuff on the map, if the map is going to be really bike focused, we really do need some narrative in the bike ped plan about our commitment to pedestrian safety. And I know, Miles, you've got on your radar to do some inventory of gaps in sidewalk associated with transit. That's another way to make it tie into regional between the activity center or transit service. So I think there are some opportunities to widen the net a little bit and try to deal with pedestrian safety. And we can always look at the PSAP plan as well.
All right. And I think we could probably start to tie in our regional Vision Zero efforts potentially as well. Amy?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Now just to follow up on that, Miles. So, I mean, if we haven't really defined where the courthouse activity centers are going in the overall regional framework of bike facilities, I think this is premature because essentially what this is doing without understanding how the rural localities that are a significant piece of this region play into this, I think that's unfair and it puts everybody in a disadvantage. New Kent County is the fastest growing locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the 10th fastest growing county in the country. So we're being put in a place where it's going to be very challenging for us to get any kind of smart scale money. It's going to be challenging for us to get any regional CBTA money. We're putting all of our local CBTA money to our smart scale project. So where are we supposed to go to be able to fund these critical projects as we're developing, right? So we don't want to be in the position of some other localities that are having to come back and retrofit at an extremely expensive cost to the region because those facilities were not incorporated at the time of construction. So we're trying to be ahead of that. And I think that if anything, we should get extra points for making those steps instead of penalizing us because we're noted as a rural locality. So I really think that we need to maybe have a policy discussion or some other discussion as to how the rural localities are being viewed and being funded at this point. Just knowing what we've had to go through to get a major project funded has been eye-opening. And I think that we need to do something at this point to reconcile that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm happy to defer this. It sounds like staff needs to go back and put more consideration to these options, but we can come back next month. This is just a discussion item today. It wasn't a request for action, but it sounds like we have some pretty clear directions on issues that we need to resolve, looking at the rural areas and then how to get sidewalks into this. I didn't have anything else on this item. The other piece we've already hit on. So the time commitment, we've already addressed both of the concerns that we had and options that we'd proposed. So I didn't have anything else for this item. I'm happy to answer any other questions or take any more comments on these.
All right, you guys are a tough cookie this morning. Moving on to item 10. Salo, they're usually nice to you. Oh yeah, but you don't even have item 10. So it's still, is this Salub or is this Miles?
Yeah, Sulab's gonna take this one for us.
Sulab, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the TAC. I believe this should be pretty quick. So the item here is an amendment to our existing long-range transportation plan, Connect RV 2045. This plan is still valid until September of 2026. So any new thing which needs current funding or which has to be approved needs to be in this plan, even though we are working on a new one, which is called Pathways to the Future 2050. And I'll provide you an update probably in April. Seems like there's already a lot of things going on in April, so probably in May. But today we are talking about an amendment to the previous long-range transportation plan, Connect RV 2045. And the request is a project in Henrico County, the interchange improvements at I-64 and US 250. So this project was, I think, broken down into different projects in Connect RV 2045. A lot of components of these projects are already there, but some of the components are missing, was not there in the constraint plan, but it was in the unconstrained plan, which we call as the vision plan. So this particular interchange improvement with the project details of making a partial cloverleaf interchange, adding traffic signals eastbound to US 250, adding a 2-lane westbound ramp, and reconstruction of the I-64 bridges over US 250. This whole package wasn't there in the constraint list. So Henrico has requested this project to be added in Connect RV 2045 constraint list of project. So the project cost is 131 million. So normally the project is not in the constraint list of the project, and if the project fits the overall arching vision, goals, and objective for Connect RV 2045, and if it's reasonably significant as defined in the project inclusion guidelines for Connect RV 2045, it normally has to be included in the constraint list of projects to seek any federal or regional funding. This project by nature, the interchange improvement was a reasonably significant project based on the project inclusion guideline. So looking at the chart here, since this project is not in the constraint list, it's not eligible for any other fundings now. So it has to be included in the long-range transportation plan so that it is eligible. The other thing is the project is undergoing a NEPA process, and unless the project has been added to the constraint list of project, that process won't be finalized as well. So as we all know, the constraint plan is a zero-sum game. So we have already had all the projects use the funding available for the constraint plan. So if we add any projects, either we have to remove some of the projects which are already there, or if we can find some of the new funding which was not used in developing the constraint budget, then we can add those projects as well. This project, we don't have any new funds, but based on our talk with Henrico County, these 3 projects which were identified in the constraint list of project, if we remove these 3 projects, then we get funding of 133 million, which is a little bit more than what is needed. So based on our discussion with Henrico County, I think we both agree that we can remove these 3 projects and then add the I-64 250 interchange improvement project in the constraint list of project. So it's a clear-cut action requested to the TAC is basically to add the interchange modification at I-64 and 250 and remove the following projects so that we have the constrained budget as it is. So that's all I have. If VDOT and Henrico County wants to add anything else, that would be fine as well.
Sharon, Enrico.
Sulab, thank you for your help in Plan RVA and VDOT to get it to this point. Sulab said it perfectly, but we're trying to get our NEPA finalized, and we need to show that all the suite of improvements are in the constrained plan. And so we're agreeing to drop 3 of the existing projects that are in the constrained to add the US 250 and I-64 interchange in Short Pump. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
All right, do we have any questions?
Madam Chair, may I make a motion?
You may. This is an action item. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I move that the TAC recommends the RRTPO policy to amend the Connect RVA 2045 plan to include a new project, the interchange modification at I-64 and US 250 in Henrico County, and remove the following projects from the Connect RVA 2045 constrained list of projects. And they are the Carolina Avenue with the ID FHW8 and Pemberton from US 250 to Quiaxin, project ID FHW94, and Shady Grove from Knuckles to the Hanover County line, project ID FHW-108.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Josh. All right, any discussion? Thank you for making this easily understandable with the swapping. That helps me a lot, I think, everybody. So Henrico is moving out one project, putting in another. All those in favor of that motion and second, please vote by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect, that motion passes. Thank you. Yay, first one for today.
Thank you.
I'm still gonna pick with everybody. Item 11, rural transportation analysis update.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just share my screen. This will be a refresher for some of you, but for those of you who have been more up to date on the project, it's still been a little while since a proper update. So just a quick review of what this project is about. The full title, the Rural Transportation Needs and Alternatives Analysis, was designed to better understand and address public transportation needs of rural communities in the region. So in this case, particularly Charles City, Goochland, Hanover, New Kent, and Powhatan counties. And ultimately, we will develop an actionable recommendation for service improvements in each of these counties, which will be presented in a comprehensive report. So just a review of what has been done so far and what still is to be done. Back in September, we did a completion of public outreach in these counties and a report that details all of the public comments and what they've said. And an existing needs report was developed after that. To be done, the report on demand capacity and operations will be complete this month, by the end of this month, and including the existing needs and public outreach will all be combined into the final report with the recommendations by next month. So there was a spectrum of possible solutions that were developed after talking with the public and a advisory group made up of local staff. And these were the solutions that were identified and vetted by the advisory group. So just to quickly go through them, Charles City, looking at introducing a new express route as part of the Bottoms Bridge Providence Forge route, and enhancing or expanding existing Bay Transit service. And I'll just say now that Charles City and New Kent have launched a Bay Transit service study separate from this study that's ongoing. I'm not positive of the exact timeline of that right now. I believe they've wrapped up their public engagement, and they're in putting their report together. In Goochland, looking at expanding or adjusting existing GRTC microtransit service and coordinating volunteer driving services. Same in Hanover, expanding existing microtransit service and coordinating volunteer service. And in Powhatan, we were looking at expanding or adjusting existing GRTC microtransit services, looking into coordinating volunteer driving services a little bit more, and looking at enhanced specialized transit services. And then New Kent, Lake Charles City, looking at introducing a new express route and enhancing existing Bay Transit services. We won't get into this, but just as part of the operational analysis that we're in right now, just doing a deep dive into service providers by the different geographies. So looking at organization, services, and service type, which ones are ADA accessible, eligibility to populations, and service times and trip types. As part of the operational analysis, we've had several more deep dive meetings with the different service providers around the region. Last month, we spoke to Bay Transit about particularly their current service and planned services. And some key takeaways were that any microtransit services in Charles City and New Kent should be funded by Bay Transit due to 5311 funding constraints. And Bay Transit can create a first last mile connection to an express route, but would kind of need to be incorporated into GRTC to operate the route and connect those the fixed route service to microtransit by Bay Transit, and that there is a desire for travel between New Kent and Charles City counties due to high transportation needs in Charles City and rapid growth in New Kent, as Amy alluded to earlier. Also last month, spoke to GRTC, and some key takeaways there were that Powhatan link service is under review and could shift service models due to the performance of that particular link zone. Expanding services into new counties have faced minimal resistance except for the issue of vehicle and driver availability. And Azalea and Ashland link zones, which are partially in Hanover County, have performed fairly well and should inform link expansion into other counties. And Hanover Dash, finally, Dash has grown significantly in ridership since their formation a few years ago. They do not wish to expand into other ridership markets just because of the constraints to their funding, and there is a gap for service in the northwestern portion of the county, particularly with non-older or disability riders. And finally, that Plan RBA could help both Dash and GRTC expand in Hanover County by identifying different sources of funding and assisting in the application process. So as part of the project, the team put together a web map using Esri's online platform to host data and maps used in the analysis. So it's organized into 6 categories here on the left: transportation, population, household, demographics, employment, and climate. And there was also a transit propensity analysis that was used to identify areas where demand would be the highest. So this is the getting into the draft solutions for each of the counties. And the images of the counties, they're a screenshot from the transit propensity. So you'll see a little bit more in the other counties, but the darker red is higher transit propensity. So all of Charles City has fairly high transit propensity due to demographics there. But so the draft solutions that we're looking at right now, introducing new express route, as I mentioned before, as part of a Bottoms Bridge, Providence Forge route that would be part of Charles City and New Kent, including 2 park and rides along this route. Both would be in New Kent County, and connecting into Richmond or New Kent and Richmond. And the best solution that has been identified as part of this draft solution is enhancing or expanding existing Bay Transit service. I mentioned before that Charles City and New Kent are in the middle or nearing the end of the Bay Transit service study. So that kind of remains to be seen. And there is a current service planned. This is not the 10 square mile zone. We're still looking to get the shapefile for that, but Bay Transit has a current service planned that's roughly 10 square miles with 1 vehicle used in the county.
Wow.
For New Kent, similar as Charles City, that new express route, including new park and ride, or 2 park and rides connecting to Richmond and Charles City. And then the best solution we've identified so far is expanding existing Bay Transit service. And again, this is not the planned 10 square mile zone, but it would likely be Providence Forge northwest to Bottoms Bridge. We've identified 3 draft solutions for Hanover just because of the little different animal Hanover. The good solution so far is coordinating volunteer driving services a little bit more comprehensively. So Hanover Senior Rides, which is active in Ashland and Mechanicsville zones, could be enhanced or expanded and into the primarily western portion of the county, which has seen higher needs. Better solution, expanding Hanover Dash services, currently serving 65 plus residents with disabilities, and could fund more service to cover more trips in the western portion of the county. And best solution here is to expand or adjust existing GRTC microtransit service. As I mentioned, there are 2 link zones currently in Hanover County, and they are highly performing link zones with high ridership. So looking at perhaps expanding the Ashland zone in particular to a little bit west into the county where it's feasible. For Goochland, the better draft solution is to coordinate volunteer driving services. Right now, there's kind of a lack of volunteer service available, and creating a service model like Hanover Senior Rides and Powhatan Ride Assist could be a solution there. And the best solutions identified so far is to expand or adjust existing GRTC microtransit service. There's not a GRTC link zone in Goochland County right now, but there's a planned link zone that would cover a small section of eastern Goochland. And Powhatan draft solutions. Better solution would be to coordinate volunteer driver services. Right now, Ride Assist are funded by Department of Social Services for 65 plus passengers, and expanding funding opportunities to enhance services where gaps exist would be an opportunity there. And the best solution for Powhatan is enhance specialized transit services following kind of the Hanover Dash model. And found that the highest propensity is in kind of Jefferson, Pine Creek Mills area along Route 60. So as part of the operational analysis that we're in right now, some key considerations and challenges we've identified, and we're working through, looking more deeply into operational feasibility of different alternatives, addressing the challenges posed by just kind of low overall density and lack of transit supportive infrastructure in these areas. We're looking to get a little bit more robust origin destination information, so that I believe we'll be getting that this week or next week, and highlighting the importance of transit supportive infrastructure and regional transit connectivity. That's been that overall regional transit connectivity has been a key theme, along with that connection with Bay Transit. So kind of also a interregional connectivity as well. So the next steps, developing recommendations and preparing the final report. So we're going to be analyzing express routes and microtransit ridership, and use it as a proxy for new routes and zones. Incorporate zoning into our mapping to draw a little bit more granular zone areas, looking at the extensions, and providing the final analysis of solutions with cost benefits for each county and each possible solution. And that, as I mentioned, the final report with those recommendations and implementation steps will be wrapped up next month in April. So just to clarify the timeline from here out, there's no requested action today with this, but in April, we plan to have the recommendations and implementation steps wrapped up. We plan to be back in May, back to the TAC to present what we found with recommendations, and we would be looking for recommendation to the policy board. And since I believe there's no June meeting for the policy board planned right now, it would likely go before them in July. So any questions? Also, there's more information at our Plan RVA engagement page. It's engage.planrva.org/rural transportation.
Well, thank you, Dan. We have a couple of hands up, Joe and then Nora.
Hi, Dan. I just wanted to clarify one thing. So there are two microtransit zones in Hanover County, the Ashland zone and the Azalea zone. The Azalea zone is split. Essentially, a portion of it is in Hanover and a portion of it extends into Henrico County, or the city. But nevertheless, virtually, you mentioned its performance, and overall it performs very well, but I would say probably 99% of that performance is across the county line, and it's not within Hanover. So you may want to look a little bit closer at that. I'm not trying to be negative towards microtransit, and perhaps we don't have the correct zone boundaries on our side, but just I think just be I would caution you on how you describe that performance with respect to Hanover.
Thank you. Nora and then Amy.
Thanks, Dan. This was really great. Can you go back to the Hanover slide where you had your 3 recommendations? And I'm glad Joe went first. I want to make sure he wasn't going to say something similar. I would argue that, and I know your recommendation here is to expand the Ashland zone, not the one on Mechanicsville necessarily to fix the issues that you referenced, but I would argue that that expanding the microtransit service in Ashland, increasing that zone is not the best option. It's already been expanded, in my opinion, beyond what it's capable of serving. And to add on more land would just continue to degrade our pickup times and our not available times, which I think we're already having an issue with. To create a new zone perhaps, or to increase the fixed route further north of Virginia Center, therefore decreasing the microtransit area could be an option, but I don't think increasing the zone should be considered a best option.
Thank you. Amy.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. All right, Dan, thank you so much. Good information. I think it would be helpful maybe if we had a follow-up conversation, because I think you're missing a lot of the recommendations that have already been solidified coming out of the Bay Transit. I don't recall having a follow-up meet, like another project meeting with a bigger group since like last fall. And I think maybe we had some email conversations back and forth about, we'll use the recommendations that come up out of the Bay Transit study in this study. So I want to make sure that, you know, if you're already at the sort of finish line with this, and we're not, you still haven't incorporated the recommendations that have been solidified in, you know, through the Bay Transit study, I think, you know, we might need to slow up a little bit and make sure that that information is incorporated and accurately reflected. Because the zone that you're showing in New Kent is not correct. The little bubble area that you have. So we have a well-defined now zone that I think we should be able to reflect. The other piece of this is I really think that we need to understand, you know, the express service from GRTC. We've requested that GRTC do the study. Our park and ride lot is currently under construction at Bottoms Bridge. Should be finished fall, early winter at latest. At which time we should be, you know, we'll be in a position to start some kind of service. We have had some initial conversations with GRTC about that, just wanting to understand the demand for that. So I think there needs to be some concrete steps forward and recommendations on how we get to that point. You know, New Kent's primary pickup point is going to be the Bottoms Bridge. If there's another point, if there's another stop in the Providence Forge area, you know, we'll be happy to work with Charles City on that. But that's going to be a Charles City initiative to, you know, to locate that and to develop that. And again, we'll be good partners in that, but we're really focused right now on the Bottoms Bridge park and ride lot as our primary pickup point. So the other piece of this is when this whole thing started, you know, we discussed the funding for rural transit. And, you know, I think originally I had made the recommendations that we need to understand what kind of services could be provided. You know, you referenced Dash, but there are other rural providers out there that may serve as a good model for the rural localities. And also, you know, how we fund that's sort of an open-ended question mark. However, you know, so far we've put in either close to or more than $3 million for public transportation service to GRTC, and we're not receiving any service. So we are funding transit that we're not receiving service. So I think that absolutely needs to be noted, and how that gets reconciled, right? Because unfortunately, GRTC does a great job, but they're not a rural provider. So while they can provide the microtransit service piece, they cannot provide the rural service piece. So that's where I think we have a little bit of a disconnect with trying to have one regional service provider at this point in time. Maybe at some point that could change. But as it was previously noted, 5311 is what funds our rural service. And GRTC is not a 5311 provider or recipient, right? They provide urban service. So that needs to be reconciled. And if we had that $3 million for our transit service, I can guarantee you we would have much better service right now that we would be putting forward that would benefit our localities and the region.
And thank you, Amy. I think that's definitely a good leeway into the work that we're doing here on the TPO side, and trying to get those planning and that outlook over to the CVTA side, the funding side. So I think that with GRTC having, I know that the CVTA has begun to ask potentially a little bit more of GRTC in the presentation of the public transportation plan, and maybe in there is where after we can get all of these recommendations together, that those are some of the things that could be highlighted or rolled into that to now put again the planning to the dollars. I think that we're definitely going in the right direction. And as long as Amy is there, she's gonna make sure we get there. So I think that we hear you, Amy. Thank you, Dan, for this. I think you've heard all the comments. Again, I would, continue to work closely with our rural localities and trying to get this right for them, because it is important that the dollars that people are investing, we can see how we can provide some solutions that can meet everyone's needs. So I think we've heard, again, I think we're getting there, but we just need to keep working towards it. So thank you for that update. I would say that we would invite you back, maybe, I don't know, I know Miles and Amy was at the helm of that rural group, so maybe if you all need to call another meeting, I encourage you to do that. But let's keep this on the radar as we do tighten up what that regional public transportation plan looks like and how we can start to incorporate some of these strategies into that overall plan for the region. All right, we're gonna keep on. We're doing 2 hours in. We have the Miles. We still have our UPWP priorities, and
Madam
then
Chair,
yes.
This is very quick. I promise. This is just a 5-minute update for me.
Okay.
So we discussed at the policy board at the executive committee this past month the draft priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. This year just happens to be a convergence of all of our core work. So our TIP is on a 3-year cycle, LRTP is on a 5-year cycle, our federal review is on a 4-year cycle, and next year is the year where we've got all of them coming at the same time. So we'll start off the summer with the federal certification review, with that report coming sometime in 2026. The TIP has to be completed by the spring of 2026, and the LRTP by the fall of 2026. With the next work program somewhere in there. So our focus for this next year is really on getting all the core products of the MPO completed. So that is going to be our primary focus. That said, we heard you loud and clear at the last 2 meetings about safety. So safety is focused. We're standing up safety as its own set aside program within our UPWP. And we will be focusing on updating the safety plan as well as the putting together the engagement and materials. Some of you will be hearing from us if you haven't already, as we're trying to put together a library of what exists already for sort of outreach and campaign materials for safety across the region. And then the only other piece I wanted to hit on was, continuing the multimodal focus, trying to implement the BRT initiatives, all the big GRTC projects, working with GRTC on the annual CVTA plans, but also the rural study and what comes out of this, working to help implement those projects. On the bike ped side, we have TAP. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to try and start a Western spine refinement study, try and figure out where we want to put that corridor to connect out to Charlottesville. And then finally, on the freight program, continuing to stand that up, building toward eventually an intermodal strategy update after we wrap up the LRTP. So a lot going on in terms of the plans, but our big focus is really just getting through all of our core products next year because everything is coming due at the same time. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you guys have other key priorities, please feel free to reach out to me. We are starting work on a draft UPWP for your review next month.
All right, thank you, Miles. Item 13, agency updates. DRPT.
Hello, everyone. I'll make this really quick. Two major updates. One being that our FY26 5303 grant opportunity is open and available for applications. That will close on May 1st, and this primarily pertains to the MPO staff. Secondly, another MPO staff related item. We are hosting a webinar on March 21st. From 11:30 till 1. This is going to focus on the 5303 application, UPWP development, and various policies and procedures. I wanted to also kind of circle back on something that Miles mentioned with the UPWP development. We are still awaiting apportionment tables for the 5303 funding, and we are encouraging MPOs to continue to use previous year's allotments in developing their draft UPWPs. And when we get an apportionment table from FTA and run it through the formula, we will get that information out to the MPOs as soon as possible. That concludes my updates for today.
Thank you. GRTC.
Yes, I just have a quick update as well. So GRTC is excited to announce the launch of our new website featuring a new redesign and a new user experience. We encourage everyone to visit ridegrtc.com and have a look for themselves at the new interface, which aims to let riders easily access transit information as it relates to schedules, ensuring a more transit transparent experience. Excuse me. As we briefly mentioned last month at the end, GRTC's efforts to better support operators and riders have led to the introduction of two new programs to prioritize safety and reduce disruptions to the transit experience. The first of those is the public safety officers, who will be stationed at major transfer locations such as the downtown transfer station and the Pulse BRT line, to deter and respond to safety concerns. The armed security professionals are trained in de-escalation techniques, mental health, crisis intervention, first aid, CPR, and emergency response. Meanwhile, the other one is public safety ambassadors, which board buses and are a more customer service oriented presence. They are unarmed GRTC employees. They are similarly trained in de-escalation methods. They also offer help and tend to customers' questions and concerns. And then lastly, GRTC operators and the maintenance team are headed up to Fairfax this Sunday to participate in the Virginia State Bus and Maintenance Rodeo, where dozens of operators and maintenance teams from across the state will gather for the safety and operations competition. So we are rooting for them. And that wraps up the GRTC agency update for this month. So I'm happy to field any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. Any questions for GRTC? Ride finders, Mr. O'Keefe. Oops, wait, we do have a question for GRTC. Josh?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Robinson, just a quick question for you about the public safety ambassadors on the bus. As you know, GRTC has the one stop in Goochland County, which serves the Sheltering Arms Institute, and would love to talk with someone at GRTC about having a public safety ambassador presence on that route. Who's a good person to talk to?
Yeah, you can absolutely reach out to me through the email that's probably included on this meeting invite. And yeah, just anyone on the planning team can definitely coordinate that for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Just want to let everybody know that last month we did start a new 8-passenger van pool from Chester to DC, going to the Virginia Bureau of Prisons up there. We've also been busy in February and March. I'll just highlight some of the meetings we had. We did do a van pool marketing collaboration meeting with OmniRide, which is where they're our partners for van pooling kind of to the north of us. We also held a meeting with the Tri-Cities Chili Peppers on some potential partnerships. And we've done some presentations to Richmond International Airport, as well as we did a virtual presentation to the Washington Navy Yard on a transportation benefits fair that would held over 200 employees. The Navy Yard in DC is a large employer up there, but is shrinking its parking. And so they were looking at ways to get employees to work, and van pooling is one of them, and we do have several van pools going there. We've also been active with the Chamber RVA and the Southern Virginia Regional Chamber of Commerce, attended several meetings there. I know we're meeting with Plan RVA to discuss potential collaborations between ride finders and Plan RVA, and we continue to promote transit and encourage riders to snap pictures on the bus stops and on the bus, and show their favorite seats and share their must-have transit essentials. Be glad to answer any questions anyone may have, but that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for ride finders? Hearing none, VDOT.
All right, I've got a few items to note. One, the annual SYIP Spring Public Hearing, April 22nd, 4 o'clock. It'll be at the Richmond District Office. Next thing, for transportation and alternatives and revenue sharing. So the pre-application intake period is going to open April 1st, and that will go till May 30th. Now, in support of that, there's a few training efforts that have been going on. One's already happened on March 5th. There was a revenue sharing webinar. I think they're going to post that on the external site. So hopefully folks will have access to that if needed. Now, see, on the TA side, there'll be one March 19th that hasn't happened yet. So that'll be from 1 to 3. So there should be webinar registration links available for the TA side. And then at the district level, what we're going to be doing is hosting a revenue share and TA workshop about application readiness, and that'll be on April 2nd. So our main contact there is going to be Amy Ettinger at the office. But if you don't have her contact information and you have any questions, you can always get in touch with me and I'll get you where you need to be. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan.
You're welcome.
Any questions for VDOT? Item 14, make sure you all take a look at the Better Together Connector newsletter. 15, TAC member comments. Any comments from our members? Hearing none. Our next meeting is scheduled
Madam
for,
Chair.
all right, Josh.
Sorry, I do have a comment. We are pending a new person to come on to our team, and would be reaching out to people to talk about some orientation, some mentoring, and throughout both TAC and the region. And so just wanted to give some heads up to folks in the next 2 to 4 weeks as some of these activities are occurring that are already scheduled. I'll be reaching out to people. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we're all willing and able to help any way we can. All right, our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, April the 8th at 9 a.m. Hearing no other items, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.